Today, we are connecting over the theme reaction, how we react to the everyday occurrences in our lives. In an era of ever-changing information, how do we act? And when something changes at the drop of a hat, what's our reaction? Reaction comes when something changes. And I'm going to start today by telling you about the biggest change in my life. When I moved to Washington, D.C., I was 21 years old. I had come from rural Washington State, where I had spent every single one of those first 21 years. And based on the political dramas I had managed to watch before I came to DC, House of Cards, Scandal, the newsroom, I understood that there were two things I had to do to be successful in DC. I had to network, and I had to keep my head down. But I came from a really small town. I couldn't go into the grocery store without seeing someone I knew. My network was pre-existing, and everyone already knew literally everything about me. So this new reality in this city seemed totally foreign and impossible to navigate. But I knew I had to battle my intense imposter syndrome and put myself out there and start networking. So what I did, I came up with an elaborate scheme. Essentially to trick people into telling me about their entire career from start to finish, sparing no detail. I started a podcast. It was the perfect plan. I had a reason to reach out to anybody, a reason for them to sit down with me and answer my questions. I had a reason to get in the room with people I admired and learn from them. I did soon learn that this was not exactly the perfect plan. The retelling of someone's career from start to finish, sparing no detail, is not exactly as compelling as a podcast as it was to me, a 21-year-old brand new person to DC. And I also soon learned that most people are more than willing to get to know you professionally if you just ask. But I soon encountered an even harder problem than my original problem of not knowing how to network. I couldn't connect with people on a personal level. And it wasn't for lack of trying. I was going to events and shows and after-work happy hours and graduate school socials. But there seemed to be this veneer, a layer that I couldn't get past. And I wanted to know more about the accomplished and driven people I was meeting, what they were afraid of, how they approached parenthood and relationship, how it feels to be alone, and what their creative outlets are. So I pivoted my elaborate scheme, and instead of tricking people into telling me about their career, I decided I would trick people into getting personal. And that was an interesting podcast. And it turns out it was something that other people were craving too. My podcast, DC Diary, we tell the personal stories from political Washington. We produce shows that focus on people rather than on politics or on policy. And now, instead of feeling that intense imposter syndrome, I get to host events and welcome people into my space and connect in a way that I had been craving all along. I did learn, eventually, that I didn't need my podcast to connect in a personal way with people. What I needed to do was to be vulnerable and open to new relationship myself. But creating my podcast was a reaction, some might call it an overreaction, to a big change in my life, moving to a new city. And it was also a reaction to a lot of other things. A fear of rejection, a fear of vulnerability, a fear of the unknown. It was a reaction to my desk job to find a creative outlet. And it was a reaction to the pace of this city. I kind of felt like having one job wasn't enough, that I needed to have something else to keep pace with my peers. But when something changes and we're moved to react and we take an action, however big or small, we use our unique experiences and skills and perspectives to take an action that only we could take. And so today, for me to be hosting TEDxFoggyBottom, it is such a privilege. It feels a bit like the apex of my scheme to get to know people personally. We have a slate of amazing, accomplished speakers, and I am so excited to share this day with you.